Philadelphia, 1975. Late afternoon. The gym was on the corner of Market Street. Old, dirty. The kind of place where real fighters trained. Not actors. Not wannabes. Real fighters. The windows were covered in grime. You could barely see through them. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered. Some were broken. The ones that worked cast a yellow glow over everything. There was a ring in the center. Canvas stained brown from years of blood and sweat. The ropes were frayed. The corner pads were cracked. Along the walls were heavy bags, most of them patched with duct tape. Speed bags hanging from rusted chains. A few weights scattered on the floor. This wasn't a place you came to look good. This was a place you came to suffer. Sylvester Stallone walked in. He was 29 years old, broke, unknown. He'd been writing a screenplay about a boxer, a nobody who gets a shot at the champion. He'd been working on it for months, every night, at his kitchen table in his cramped apartment. The heating barely worked. His fingers would go numb from the cold. But he kept writing, because the story meant something to him. It was about a guy who had nothing, who nobody believed in, but who got one chance. One shot to prove he was more than what people saw. Stallone knew that feeling. He'd been that guy his whole life. But Stallone had a problem. He'd never been in a real fight. He'd done some training, some bag work, some shadow boxing. But he'd never stepped into a ring with someone who actually wanted to hurt him. And if he was going to write about a boxer, he needed to know what it felt like. So he came to this gym. The place smelled like sweat and leather. The walls were stained. The floor was covered in tape marks from years of footwork drills. There were about 15 guys training, some on bags, some sparring, some doing rope work. Nobody looked at Stallone. He walked to the front desk. An old man was sitting there, reading a newspaper, smoking a cigarette. "I want to spar," Stallone said. The old man looked up. He stared at Stallone for a long moment. He saw the paralyzed face, the slurred speech, the cheap clothes. He'd seen 1,000 guys like this. Dreamers. Guys who thought they were guys who watched boxing on TV and thought they could do it. They all left on stretchers. "You a boxer?" "No." "Then why do you want to spar?" "I'm writing a movie about boxing. I need to know what it feels like." The old man laughed. Not a friendly laugh, a dismissive one. "This ain't Hollywood, kid. You come in here, you get hurt. I know." "No, you don't. You think you know, but you don't." Stallone leaned forward. "I need to know what it feels like to be hit. Really hit. Not in a movie. Not fake. Real." The old man studied him. "Why?" "Because if I don't know, I can't write it. I can't make it true." The old man was quiet for a moment. Then he stubbed out his cigarette. "You sure?" "Yes." The old man stubbed out his cigarette. He stood up. He was shorter than Stallone but wider. Thick shoulders. Scarred knuckles. "All right. Wait here." The old man walked across the gym. He stopped at the ring. There was a fighter inside. Heavy-set. Muscular. His hands were wrapped. He was hitting the mitts with a trainer. The old man said something to him. The fighter looked over at Stallone. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. The old man came back. "His name's Joe Frazier. Not the Joe Frazier. But he fights like him. He'll spar with you." Stallone nodded. "You got gear?" "No." The old man sighed. He went to a locker. He pulled out old gloves, headgear, mouthguard. "Put these on." Stallone did. The gloves were too big. 16 ounces. Worn out. The padding was flat. They smelled like old sweat and mildew. The headgear was worse. Leather cracked. Padding compressed. It sat crooked on Stallone's head. He tried to adjust it but it wouldn't stay. The mouthguard was someone else's. Yellow. Teeth marks still in it. Stallone put it in his mouth. It tasted like rubber and salt. But Stallone didn't complain. He climbed into the ring. The canvas felt different under his feet. Softer than he expected. Like walking on a trampoline that doesn't bounce. Joe Frazier, the other one, was waiting. He was about 6 feet tall. 210 pounds. His face was flat. His eyes were cold. Scar tissue over both eyebrows. Nose that had been broken multiple times. knuckles thick and misshapen. This wasn't his first fight. This was probably his 500th. You ever been hit? Joe said. Not really. Joe smiled. You will be. He said it like a promise. The trainer, an older black man with gray hair, came over. 3 rounds. 2 minutes each. You want to stop, you wave your hand. Got it? Stallone nodded. And kid, the trainer said, keep your hands up. The bell rang. Stallone moved forward. He didn't know what he was doing. He'd seen boxing on TV. He'd watched fights. Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman. He'd studied their footwork, their combinations. But watching and doing are 2 different things. In the movies, everything is choreographed. Every punch is planned. Every movement is rehearsed. Here, nothing was planned. Here you just survived. Joe didn't move. He just stood there, waiting. Stallone threw a jab. It was slow, awkward. His shoulder didn't rotate. His hip didn't turn. His foot didn't pivot. It was all arm. It didn't even reach Joe's face. Joe slipped it. Barely moved his head. Just a slight tilt. Then he threw one back. It hit Stallone square in the nose. The impact was instant, like getting hit with a hammer. Stallone's head snapped back. His eyes watered immediately. He tasted blood. Warm, metallic. The pain came a second later. Sharp, shooting up into his skull. He stumbled backward. His legs felt weak. His vision blurred for a moment. Joe didn't follow. He just stood there, watching. Calm, patient, like a cat watching a mouse. Hands up. The trainer yelled from outside the ring. Stallone raised his hands. But they felt heavy. The gloves felt like they weighed 50 pounds each. His arms were already tired. And it had been 10 seconds. Stallone raised his hands. But they felt heavy. The gloves felt like weights. He threw another jab. This one landed on Joe's shoulder. Joe didn't react. Then he stepped forward. And he threw a hook. It came fast. Too fast. Stallone saw it. But he couldn't move. The punch hit him in the ribs. On the left side. The air left Stallone's lungs. He doubled over. Joe stepped back. Get up, the trainer said. Stallone straightened. He tried to breathe. But it hurt. He looked at Joe. Joe wasn't even sweating. Stallone moved forward again. He threw a combination. Jab, cross, hook. None of them landed clean. Joe slipped them all. Like he was dancing. Then Joe threw a straight right. It hit Stallone on the chin. Stallone's legs went weak. The ring blurred. He felt himself falling. But he didn't fall. He grabbed the ropes. He held on. The gym had gone quiet. Everyone had stopped training. They were watching. Some were smiling. Some were shaking their heads. They'd seen this before. Some actor. Some tough guy. Coming in thinking he could hang. They never lasted more than 1 round. You wanna stop? The trainer asked. Stallone shook his head. Blood dripped from his nose onto the canvas. You sure? Stallone nodded. He couldn't speak. His mouth was full of blood. The bell rang. First round over. Stallone went to the corner. He sat on the stool. His mouth was bleeding. His ribs were on fire. His face was already swelling. He could feel his left cheek puffing up. His nose was definitely broken. 2 minutes. That's all it had been. 2 minutes. And he felt like he'd been hit by a truck. The old man from the desk came over. He handed Stallone water. Stallone took it. His hands were shaking. He drank. The water mixed with blood in his mouth. He spit it into a bucket. Pink water. Bits of tissue. You don't have to do this, kid. Stallone spit again. Yes, I do. Why? Because I need to know what it's like to keep fighting when you want to quit. Stallone looked up at the old man. His left eye was swelling shut. But his right eye was clear. Determined. The old man looked at him. Then he nodded. He'd seen that look before. In fighters who became champion. Not because they were the most talented. But because they refused to quit. All right. The bell rang. Round 2. Stallone stood up. His legs were shaking. His ribs screamed with every breath. But he walked to the center of the ring. Every step felt like walking through mud. His body was shutting down. Telling him to stop. Telling him this was insane. But his mind said keep going. Joe was waiting. You got heart. I'll give you that. Joe said. There was something in his voice. Not pity, not mockery, respect. Small. But there. Stallone didn't respond. He couldn't. His mouth was too swollen. His mouth guard barely fit anymore. He raised his hands. Joe moved forward. Faster this time. He threw a jab. Then another. Then a hook. All three landed. Stallone's head snapped back. Once. Twice. 3 times. He stumbled backward. His back hit the ropes. Joe followed. He threw a body shot. Then another. Then an uppercut. Stallone couldn't breathe. He couldn't see straight. He couldn't think. But he didn't go down. He pushed off the ropes. He threw a wild hook. It missed. Joe countered with a cross. It hit Stallone on the temple. Everything went white. Stallone felt his knees buckle. He felt himself falling. But before he hit the canvas, he caught himself. His hand touched the mat. He pushed himself up. The gym was completely silent now. Even Joe had stopped. He was staring at Stallone. "Stay down," Joe said. Stallone shook his head. He stood up. His face was covered in blood. His left eye was swelling shut. His mouth was split open. But he raised his hands. The trainer stepped into the ring. "That's enough." "No," Stallone said. His voice was slurred, blood dripping from his lips. "Kid, you proved your point. You don't have to. I need to finish." The trainer looked at the old man. The old man nodded. The trainer stepped back. "One more round." "That's it." The bell rang. Round 3. Stallone walked forward. Slower this time. Every step hurt. Every breath hurt. Joe didn't attack. He just stood there, watching. "Come on," Stallone said. Joe shook his head. "You got nothing left." "I got enough." Joe looked at him. Really looked at him. Then he nodded. He moved forward. But this time he didn't throw hard. He threw technical punches, jabs, light crosses, testing Stallone's defense. Stallone blocked some, took others. But he kept moving forward. He threw a jab. It was weak, but it landed on Joe's chest. Joe didn't react. Stallone threw another. Then another. None of them hurt, but he kept throwing. Joe threw a hook. It hit Stallone on the side of the head. Stallone stumbled, but he didn't fall. He threw a wild overhand right. It was slow, obvious. Anyone could see it coming. But Joe didn't move. The punch landed on Joe's jaw. It didn't hurt him, but Joe stepped back. And for the first time he smiled. A real smile. The bell rang. Fight over. Stallone dropped his hands. He stood in the center of the ring, breathing hard, blood dripping onto the canvas. Joe walked over. He took off his gloves. He held out his hand. Stallone took it. "You can't fight," Joe said. Stallone nodded. "I know. But you got something." "What?" "You don't quit." Stallone looked at him. Joe patted him on the shoulder. "That's more important than knowing how to fight." The trainer came over with a towel. He handed it to Stallone. "You alright, kid?" Stallone pressed the towel to his face. "Yeah. You proved what you needed to prove." Stallone nodded. The old man from the desk was waiting by the ropes. "You come back anytime you want. No charge." Stallone climbed out of the ring. He walked to the locker room. His body was screaming. Every muscle. Every bone. He sat on a bench. He looked at himself in the mirror. His face was destroyed. Left eye completely swollen shut. Couldn't even open it. Nose crooked. Definitely broken. Lips split open in 2 places. Upper and lower. Bruises forming on his cheeks. Dark purple. Almost black. His ribs were worse. He lifted his shirt. The entire left side was red, turning purple. He touched it gently. Pain shot through his body. He'd have to go to a hospital, get x-rays, make sure nothing was fractured. But he was smiling. Not a big smile. His face hurt too much, but a small one. Because he'd found it. The thing he'd been looking for. He'd found out what it felt like to be hit, to be hurt, to want to quit, and to keep going anyway. Not because he was tough, not because he was strong, but because quitting would have meant admitting he didn't belong there. And Stallone knew he belonged. Not as a boxer, but as someone who understood what boxers felt. That night, Stallone went home. His wife saw his face, and screamed. He crossed out pages. He rewrote scenes. He added new dialogue. Because now he knew. He knew what Rocky felt like. He knew what it meant to be knocked down and get back up. Not because you're strong, but because you refuse to stay down. 3 months later, Stallone finished the screenplay. He called it Rocky. He tried to sell it. Producers liked it, but they didn't want Stallone to play the lead. "You're not a boxer," they said. Stallone smiled. "I know, but I've been in a ring. And I didn't quit." They didn't understand. But Stallone did. When Rocky was finally made, there's a scene. Early in the film, Rocky is sparring with a young fighter. The kid is faster, stronger, better. But Rocky keeps coming forward. He takes punch after punch. His face gets bloody. His body breaks down. But he doesn't stop. The kid finally backs off. Out of respect. Because even though Rocky can't win, he won't quit. That scene came from Stallone's real experience. That day in the gym. That fight with Joe. Years later, in an interview, Stallone was asked about preparing for Rocky. "Did you train with real boxers?" Stallone nodded. "I sparred once. Got destroyed." "Why'd you do it?" Stallone smiled. The same smile from that day in the gym. "Because I needed to know if I could take a real punch." "And could you?" "I took about 20. The interviewer laughed. "Did you win?" "No. But I didn't quit either." And that's what made Rocky real. Not the punches Stallone threw, but the punches he took. And the fact that he kept standing. Because that's what heroes do. Not because they're unbreakable, but because they refuse to stay broken. Joe Frazier, the other one, never became famous. He fought locally, had a decent career, retired in his 30s. But years later, when Rocky became a phenomenon, a reporter found Joe, asked him if he remembered Stallone. "Yeah, I remember him," Joe said. "What was he like?" Joe smiled. "Couldn't fight worth a damn. But he had heart. More than most guys I fought." "You think that's why Rocky worked?" Joe nodded. "People don't want to see someone who's perfect. They want to see someone who gets knocked down and gets back up." He paused. "That's what Stallone showed me that day. He got knocked a lot. But he kept getting up." "Why do you think he did that?" Joe looked at the reporter. "Because quitting would have been easier. And he didn't want easy. He wanted real. And that's the difference between acting and living. Acting is pretending to be brave. Living is being scared and doing it anyway." Stallone walked into that gym scared. He walked out bloody. But he walked out knowing who he was. Not an actor playing a boxer, but a fighter who refused to quit. And that's why Rocky lives forever. Not because of the punch, but because of the heart. The question is, when was the last time you took a real punch and kept fighting?